No matter how hard the guilds may try, there are always those on Ravnica for whom the plots and counterplots just don't apply. From Planeswalkers to Primordials, and from the Gate to the Gateless, Ravnica is a city that's full of surprises.
So the gates came about because we had a little problem we were trying to solve. We knew in both Return to Ravnica and Gatecrash, we wanted a cycle of common lands, dual lands, and a cycle of rare dual lands. Now, we knew we would bring back the shock land, so that was a done deal. Now, the obvious choice for the commons would be the invasion tap land. Just they come and play tapped, and you can tap them for either C or D. The problem was, those are strictly worse than the shock lands. And while imagine we do strictly worse all the time, we try to not avoid doing it in the same set. And so we're like, okay, well, can we do something? Is there some way to make these a little different? And the problem was everything we tried was just a little complicated. And we're like, well, is there a way to just do the tap lands? And then Creative said, well, we're trying to make these gates. Every guild in the story has these gates. I'm like, oh, well, what if we label these as gates, and then we had cards that cared about them? Then they'd have a special value a little beyond just a normal tap land. And then we took that idea, and it started snowballing from there. And as you'll see as the block folds out, each set sort of adds more to that.
We wanted to play up the gates in the set. We wanted to have a few more cards starting to incentivize really encouraging you playing like a lot of gates, not to sort of just check if you have one gate. We have like Crackling Perimeter, which is like, you can really just play all gates and see what happens. All your lands are going to come into play tap, so it's going to be a tricky endeavor. But there are a lot of cards that are sort of rewarding you for tapping and untapping gates, like Greenside Watcher is an example of like a card that untaps a gate. You have Gateway Shade that wants you to tap. And there are also a lot of enchant lands, and those are good places to potentially put some of those onto with stuff like the Greenside Watcher.
A lot of times our most exciting developments are happy accidents in creative. When we were working on the Return to Ravnica concept illustration, Alexei Briclo designed a sort of symbolic passageway. I can't remember which one he did first. I think it was Rakdos. It might have been Simic. But it was that gateway that said, oh, we need 10 of those. We need one of those to represent each sort of symbolic entryway into guild space. And we wanted to design the 10 to typify the guild's character, to make them express the guilds just like everything else in the set expresses the guilds. So the 10 guild gates are very different in design, and we hope that you can see the guild's character come through in them. For example, the Boros Guild Gate resembles this low fortress wall. The Orzhov Guild Gate looks like the entrance to a basilica or to a holy courtyard. The Simic Guild Gate looks almost as though you're going to walk through it and be underwater somehow. And of course, the Dimir Guild Gate doesn't look like anything. It looks like a simple doorway.
We wanted to find places that Gatecrash was going to go that Return to Ravnica had not. One of the things we hit on was trying to really make an awesome cycle of cards for multiplayer, in particular for a slightly more casual crowd. We hit upon these avatars that are all primordials. They all do something that's scale based on the number of players that you're playing against. So for each opponent, you get to do one thing. In this case, Molten Primordial is a card. It's like, I'm going to steal active treason one of each of your guys. And, it's a mini insurrection of sorts. I guess you don't really need to steal all of their guys. Probably just one from each player is plenty good. And then, it has haste. It's also going to swing in. And yeah, we tried to really just drive home these cards that are for a very particular audience, and made sure we gave something for them too.
Last time we saw Gideon, he was on Zendikar, and he was fighting a very serious Eldrazi threat. And that is still his main concern. He's come to Ravnica, in a way, looking for allies. He's come knowing that Ravnica is a metropolis, it's a melting pot, it's a place where planeswalkers come from all over the multiverse. And he's here seeking some kind of aid that he could bring back to Zendikar.
But on Ravnica, he finds that the violence is escalating, and there's tons of people caught in the crossfire between guild aggressions. So he resolves to stay there for the time being and help out the innocent people of Ravnica instead. He's not sure how things are progressing on Zendikar. He means to find out, but first he's going to deal with this more pressing problem. To that effect, he sort of gets a sense of the guild landscape and decides that the Boros Legion is the guild with whom he's most closely aligned, but they're still too militaristic for him. They're still too aggressive. He can't throw in his weight behind the Boros entirely. Instead, he wants to try to talk Aurelia down a little bit and help her take the action that she needs to take to stabilize Ravnica.
We went through a ton of designs for the new Gideon Champion of Justice. The original Gideon Jura, His special thing was that he turned into a creature and got right into battle and fought, which was unique among planeswalkers. There was a contingent who, for the new Gideon, absolutely did not want that to happen again. That's what he already did. We'd already seen that, and if we did it a second time, well, now he's locked into that forever. And the opposite contingent said, well, exactly, that's his thing. That's exactly what he does. Let's do that again.
So Gideon, Champion of Justice, went through a lot of revisions before he got to the state he is in now, but we wanted him to be exciting, and I think he ended up that way. So for +1, so you play him and he goes straight up to 5 loyalty, and he gets a loyalty counter for all the creatures your opponents control after that. So against a control deck, maybe he doesn't get any, and he's just going to be a 5 loyalty, but against most decks, you'll pump him up to 8, 9, 10 loyalty on the first turn you play him. Next turn, you untap, you have your Gideon at the ready, you could plus him again, or you use his second ability, which is a 0, which makes him into a creature. We wanted all of our planeswalkers to have identities. Gideon's big identity is he turns into a creature, he fights your opponents. And he does this admirably. He becomes a creature with power toughness equal to the number of loyalty counters on him. You prevent all damage to him this turn, and in a big change from the original Gideon Jura, he's now indestructible. So if your opponent has a Doomblade or a Murder, they can't deal with him that way. They're gonna have to fight him with their creatures attacking on their turn. He comes in, he swings in for a bunch of damage, and his -15, if you ever get up that high, is crazy powerful. It exiles everything else on the battlefield. So it's just Gideon left, and at that point, your opponent is pretty much finished.
So when we were putting the whole block together, clearly the first set, Return to Ravnica, had the, hey, we're here, we're back, and we knew people were very excited. So the middle set had this weird place it was sitting in that it was a large winter set. We'd never done that before. It kind of like we had just done something, so it had to mirror what the first set did, but it had to stand on its own and be different. So even though it was like it had to have its own identity. It had to sort of marry to what the first set was doing. So when you drafted everything together, they had something. So it was like the middle child. It really was kind of like the set that had this identity that was like its older brother was sitting there behind it, had his little sister that was cuter, and how do you make it do what he needed to do? And so I'm really happy. It all came together, and it's a set that stands alone. It's its own set. All the 5 guilds. It gives them something cool to do. It marries really well with the first set. So when you play that, it does neat things. And it was a lot of work, but I'm really happy with what we came up with.
Ortsov, Demir, Gruul, Boros, Simic. 5 guilds brought to life thanks to the dedication and expertise of the team here at Wizards of the Coast. What will it look like when all 10 guilds converge in one action-packed set? Well, for that, we'll need to wait for Dragon's Maze. Until we meet again inside R&D, I'm your host Richard Hagon, saying bye.